The Zip families farmed on the northern Gold Coast for more than 100 years. In 1984, they took advantage of their position next to the Logan River, switching from cane to prawns. Water from the river circulated through the ponds before being returned. It was a neat and clean system. But in 2016, the river proved the operation's downfall. White spot disease was found in all 7 of the region's prawn farms, including theirs. Producers claim the highly contagious lethal virus was in the river, introduced unwittingly by recreational fishers using infected, imported raw prawns as bait. Until then, Australia was the world's only major prawn-producing country free of white spot. As Landline reported in 2017, the solution was brutal.
We're putting in 20,000 litres of chlorine right now, or Biosecurity Queensland is, to eliminate the 500,000 prawns that are in here.
On Nick Moore's property, the dying prawns can be seen leaping out of the chlorinated water.
Well, basically their gills are getting torn apart by the chlorine. It's a pretty horrible death.
For Trevor Zip, whose family has been farming in the area for more than a century, it was almost too much.
It's just the thought of losing your whole 30 years of your life. How do you think I feel?
The Ziffs lost their $1.5 million prawn crop. Their hatchery, which supplied other growers, was closed.
I think it was just ultimately just seemed so senseless and so predictable, and to think that, you know, your life's work has gone down the drain, and for what? And just the thought that you potentially wasted 25 years writing the textbook, being a pioneer, spending a lot of money and just starting to see a return, and then that it just disappears, and what do you do next?
Most galling was growers had lobbied Canberra for decades to ban the importation of raw prawns from countries with white spot.
Unfortunately, what they tell us is that, you know, we don't just look at these facts alone, we have to look at it in the context of our obligations on the world trade, and, you know, you're a smaller industry than other industries, and potentially getting very much the distinct feeling that, you know, we were the pawn, a very, very small and tradable pawn. And I don't think that biosecurity in this country or any country should be measured that way.
Judging the risk of reinfection to be high, they couldn't face putting themselves or their staff through another outbreak. So they got out of prawns.
I was doubtful about whether the federal government's response was appropriate or enough at the time. So the combination of those two factors meant that we were prepared to just go and do something ostensibly even riskier, which is to branch out into something that we know nothing about.
That was farming 2 fish, cobia and Queensland groper. The prawn ponds were bulldozed to create 2 lakes.
Because we're so close to the ocean, our water is actually brackish, so we range from about 20 parts through to 28 parts, depending on rainfall, and that's enabled us to grow the fish. But we actually don't release any water back to the bay, and we don't bring any water in, so it's all actually naturally fed from groundwater.
They didn't know if the tropical fish would thrive in the cooler climate, and with farming of both fish being so new, knowledge was scant.
We had no idea whether we could grow it. We had no idea when we grew it whether anyone would want to buy it. We had no idea how it would taste. So it was only one way of answering those questions, which was just do it.
How much did you risk financially doing it? Like, if it had failed, how much would you have lost?
Almost everything. Yeah. We say it's like going to the casino every year when you're in aquaculture. Put all your money on red or black and off you go.
In their favour, both fish are superior eating fish. Groper, overfished in Asia and protected here, is a prized banquet fish in China. Diners will pay close to $200 a kilo for it.
It's got a very thick skin with a lot of collagen underneath, so in Chinese medicine and everything, collagen is really important for health and well-being, so there's the added advantage of that. And when you're cooking it, you can put a lot of heat on that skin without destroying the flesh underneath.
And chefs call cobia the Wagyu of the sea.
Like Wagyu, it has a good fat content marbled through the product, so it is a good product. And for restaurants, it's a great product because, you know, it is a sashimi grade product, so it can be used in entrees, and it also can be used in main course.
Although the growing systems were more complex than that for prawns, staff quickly bedded down new processes. Brad Cherry has 25 years' experience in aquaculture, but even for him, it was learning on the job.
Are you amazed it's been so successful?
I am actually, yeah. I thought we were kidding ourselves to be able to grow the fish in lakes like this, but I can't believe we're doing what we're doing without releasing any water or bringing any new water in. And that makes us, to me, the perfect operation in regards to the environment.
After 2 years buying in cobia fingerlings, they started breeding their own.
Was it a real breakthrough to be able to breed your own cobia?
Yeah, definitely, 100%, yeah. Fingerling supply is probably one of the biggest barriers in any sort of farming, especially fish farming or prawn farming. And to be able to have some control over that ourselves has been, yeah, hugely beneficial because we can pick and choose when we want to stock.
It also meant less pressure on wild stocks.
Which is something that is a key tenet of ours, that we walk basically as an industry, you know, with the lightest touch possible and with the desire to actually leave the waterways in a better state than when we found it.
When big enough to survive outside hatchery tanks, the cobia are sedated and moved to the lake to grow out. They're harvested at 4 kilos. Rearing groper is complex, so that's left to the Cairns hatchery, which pioneered the process. It sends 25-gram fingerlings, and when they hit 200 grams, they're moved outside. Divers doing routine checks find them a bit nippy though.
They'll draw blood, so usually if we dive, booties and gloves, yeah, are pretty essential.
It used to take a year to get groper to harvest weight of 1 kilo. But tweaking fish feed formulas has halved that.
Which is the best feed to weight converter, the cobia or the groper?
Oh, the groper by far. They're not exactly the most athletic fish. They tend to eat and just sit there and end up looking a bit like me. But whereas the cobia, they swim a lot more and therefore require, yeah, a lot more feed.
Serena had to persuade chefs to switch from better-known menu favourites, so she took fish direct to chefs and invited them to visit.
And the reaction was just extraordinary. And really, that's what gave us the encouragement to continue. And we started bringing chefs out on farm. And there were those who had a particular view about aquaculture product. And when they saw how we farmed, they were just blown away, and they were, you know, on our side from day one, basically.
It's those chefs who nominated her for a prestigious Delicious Magazine award. And this year, after just 5 years in business and the huge disruption from COVID, Rocky Point Aquaculture took the top prize, Producer of the Year. For the first time in 17 years, judges rated producers on their sustainability and environmental impact.
It's amazing when the thought leaders in the industry champion sustainability, and that's when we know things are getting serious and perhaps we're going to do something about it as a country.
For Serena, the win acknowledged her team's achievements and proved aquaculture could be clean.
It's a positive story for aquaculture. We often are only in the news because it's bad news. So it's great to be able to put our front foot forward and say, you know what, Australian aquaculture is doing some really interesting world-leading things, and we should be proud of it and we should support it as a community.
White spot still lingers though. The ZIFs have joined a class action against the federal government, alleging it negligently administered its own customs and biosecurity rules.
There's over 200 litigants currently in the class. The current claim is sitting at around 150 million. It will increase once the prawn farmers quantify the losses with the forensic accountants.
A lot of these claimants want their day in court to have it determined that things should have been done differently in the first place. The government needs to appreciate that when it does not meet its own prescribed standards, there can be massive financial ramifications to the man in the street. And that's important to hold the government accountable for that.
The case starts at the end of 2024 and will run for over a year.
This is from our harvest today.
While they wait for the case to start or the government to settle, the ZIFs will focus on lifting annual production from the current 100 tonnes, aiming for carbon neutrality and securing export contracts.
We're hoping that we can double in size every year for the next few years. We'll closely assess the impact that we're having in our system as well, and we'll have to introduce measures like using oysters and mussels and potentially seaweed as well to help clean the water and keep it in pristine condition.
I think 9 out of 10 people would have walked away and not done what we've done.
Was it a real nod to Serena and the fact that she wouldn't give up?
Oh, well and truly. Tenacious is the word I use with her. She probably doesn't like that, but once she gets something in her head, she will, see it through, and that's what she does.